It's fight week, people. Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury 2 for the unified heavyweight championship of the world. Remember, it's not undisputed. Usyk gave up his IBF belt. Daniel Dubois accepted it, defeated Anthony Joshua in his first defense of that IBF crown. So he's the IBF champion. Usyk has all the other belts, so this is a unification bout. And what a lovely card this is. From top to bottom, it's a very, very stacked card. I mean, this for me is something that people need to enjoy while it's lasting. If you're a boxing fan, just coming into boxing this year per se, then you might think that this is normal with these cards with so many big fights on the undercard. It doesn't happen like this. If there's a big fight, the undercard is usually quite weak because the bulk of the money that's paying the fighters have to go to the two fighters in the main event, and then the rest of the fighters get the crumbs. But in these fights on these rehab cards, all of these fighters, at least most of them, demand a decent wage, and you top that off with the guys on the top of the bill, then you know that this is a very expensive card. To start the card off, you've got, it looks like this is the Sheikh's project, because this guy is from Saudi Arabia. He's 1-0, Mohamed Alakel, and he's going up against a journeyman called Joshua Ocampo. Joshua Ocampo got 8 wins, 33 losses, and 5 draws. But when you look at his actual resume, he's only been knocked out 3 times in 33 losses. So this means that he's a tough cookie, and it's very much a step up for Mohamed Alakel. We'll see how he does. I'm not too sure about him. I have no clue about him in terms of his boxing abilities, and where this guy is a journeyman, even though I expect him to win, because it's only a second pro fight, there's a big possibility that he could lose to this journeyman who is very tough, it looks like, from his resume. So we'll see. I expect him to win, but we'll see. Then it starts to get interesting. Johnny Fisher from Matchroom fights David Allen, 23-6 and 2 journeyman. Tough cookie, limited boxer. Johnny Fisher 12-0. I've done a fighter profile on Johnny Fisher, you can check that out. Then you've got Moses Itoma, the young upstart from Queensberry, versus Dempsey McCann, the Australian prospect, 22-1. Joseph Itomo is 10-0. So this is a step up for Moses Itomo. So we're going to see how he does. I'm very much excited about Moses Itomo's future. And this is very much a step-up fight for him, so we're going to see how he does against this tough Australian guy. His one loss came to Filip Hrgovic, so it's not a terrible loss. It's a very decent opponent he's lost to. We'll see how that goes. After that, we've got 10-1 Peter McGrail. Reese Edwards, 16-0. Featherweight contest. Reese Edwards was supposed to actually be Dennis McCann, but Dennis was found to have something in his system that is deemed to be illegal from VADA, so he got pulled from the fight against Peter McGrail, and the replacement is Reese Edwards. Then you've got Isaac Lowe against Lee McGregor. Also featherweight fight, very much a tough matchup. It's very much one to look forward to. Then we get into the meat and potatoes of this card. Andre Nowitzki versus Edgar Ramirez, heavyweight contest. Andre Nowitzki 13-0, Edgar Ramirez 10-1-1. Ramirez from Mexico, Andre Nowitzki, he's from the Ukraine, resides in America. We'll see how this fight goes. It seems to be very much a even contest in the heavyweight division. So, heavy blows, expect good competition, and even expect a knockout. Heavyweight, the WBC have thrown a trinket in there, some international thing that they're giving to the winner of this contest, so we'll see how that works out for them in terms of their movement in WBC rankings, because what I've realized is when you get these trinkets, it pushes you up the rankings. So we'll see what this does for their rankings going forward, but I believe that the backing is behind Andre Nowitzki, but you never know. Edgar Ramirez, coming from Mexico, can be a very tricky opponent, a very tough opponent. We'll see how it goes. 50-50, I have no idea who may or may not win that fight. After that, we get to a light heavyweight contest. Daniel Lapin 10-0, Dylan Collin 14-0. Very much a 50-50 fight once again in terms of resume. putting these guys in there with unbeaten records early in their careers, testing them out to see who is ready to advance at this present time. This is what boxing is all about. This is what brings excitement to boxing. And the only sad thing about it is not on a card that's in either the UK or in America where all the boxing fans can come and see it. This is in Riyadh where they're building a boxing community out there. And good luck to them. Well done the Sheikh for putting on these big boy contests with 50-50 competitive fights. Long may it continue, but it does seem a bit unsustainable, but long may it continue, and hopefully it starts blending into the American scene. In the UK, to be fair, there's been a lot of competitive fights and competitive cards. It's just that obviously the depth of the card can't always be as great as this because not everybody's got the Sheikh's money to throw around at these boxers at these events. So we'll just see how things go. After that, we've got a super welterweight contest with Sergey Bokhachuk versus Ishmael Davis. It was supposed to be Madrimov against Bokhachuk on this card, but when Madrimov found out that he was going to fight Virgil Ortiz on the undercard of Bivol versus Beterbiev rematch, all of a sudden he had bronchitis or laryngitis, some sort of itis that made him have to pull out of this fight. So Ishmael Davis is testing himself. He's 13-1. Sergey Bokhachuk is very much more experienced with 24-2 record. That seems to be the co-main event, and it's very much a tough contest for both combatants. Ishmael Davis, UK born and bred fighter, lost his last contest, which was his first and only loss, to Josh Kelly. And Sergey Bokhachuk, he lost his last contest against Virgil Ortiz in a fight that most people thought he won. I actually thought he won that fight as well. So for me, I think Virgil got gifted, but being the house fighter, being the fighter that the promoter is backing, I weren't surprised, even though I was disappointed at that result. So he's very much in good spirits, I believe. So this is a very, very hard fight for Ishmael Davis, and I believe Sergey may get the edge of this one, but we'll see. But the fight that we're here to talk about today is Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury 2. This is basically round 13. These guys know each other. They went 12 long, grueling rounds against each other. The fight prior to this, Usyk won a split decision. Now, Tyson Fury is saying that he's had 12 rounds with Usyk and he knows what to do with him now to beat him, and he always wins his rematches and such like. What I say to that is, yes, he has always won his rematches, but he's never had a rematch coming off of a loss. That's one thing, because this is his first loss. So he's never had a rematch where he's had to avenge a loss. So that's one factor. And he says, now I know Usyk better because I've been in the ring before with him. But that goes the same for Usyk. He also knows you better now that he's been in the ring with you. So you're both at the same advantage, which then cancels out the advantage of both of you. And now it comes back down to who has the better skills and who can adjust more to do what's necessary to push the win over the line. Will it be Usyk once again, or will Tyson Fury make the necessary adjustments to win the fight? My opinion is that although Tyson Fury reckons all he has to do this time is knock him out, and he can knock him out, I don't know Tyson Fury to be a heavy-hitting boxer per se. He's only had the willingness to sit down on punches and really go for knockouts against guys that he feels comfortable in there with to be able to press the action, i.e. Deontay Wilder. He realized from the first fight how limited he was as a boxer and decided to be a come forward pressure type fighter in the 2 fights after the first fight, which he had never done before. And even though he knocked out Dillian Whyte with a different style, he still was confident enough in his ability over Dillian Whyte to do the necessary things to win the fight by knockout. And I believe that knockout wasn't legal. my opinion. He pushed him down at the point of when he punched him. So as he punched him, he pushed him down at the same time. I believe that this was very much something that should not have been able to happen, but the referee didn't call it, so it happened, and here we are. But I don't see that as a knockout from a punch per se. I see that as a knockout from the impact of him hitting the canvas as hard as he did, from the push that came after the punch. If you look back at that fight, he punched and then pushed, and then Dillian Whyte fell back and hit his head hard. So as you can see, he was trying to get back up, but he couldn't because he hit his head hard. So that for me isn't a legitimate knockout. But as you saw also in that Dillian Whyte fight, when Dillian Whyte came out in the first round, he came out as a southpaw. Tyson Fury had all types of problems, which is the same thing that Usyk gave to him in the first fight, all type of problems. Tyson Fury does fancy himself as a bit of a switch hitter, but in his switch hitting, he has no power whatsoever. The little bit of power that he has as an orthodox fighter vanishes when he does his southpaw switch. It's disgusting. It's not necessary. Well, it can be necessary as a defensive mechanism, but it's not necessary for his attack because it has no fruitfulness in its attack in terms of landing, telling shots to back your opponent up. You can score your shots, but you can't put any heat on your opponent pushing them backwards because you have no power in that stance. You have no power in both stances, but even less in the southpaw stance. For me, I believe Usyk wins the rematch. He could even win it by way of knockout. They both believe that they can knock each other out in the rematch. I believe, personally, that it's more Usyk that will do so. Everyone's saying that Tyson Fury should just go forward and put his heavy frame and big frame on his opponent and wear him down. He's a little man. The thing about Usyk is he's always been the little man in his contests. After the amateurs going forward into the pros, he's just been the little man every single time. So he knows nothing else other than fighting the bigger man. That's why, in my opinion, he struggled with Chisora, because he's not had the advantage of having a fighter that's either his height or a bit shorter. So that gave him a bit of problems. Plus, couple that with the fact that Chisora is a pressure fighter constantly, and Usyk is more of a pugilist specialist with his amateur style, even though he does apply pressure with his movement and his angles, as well as his shot selections and his hundreds and thousands of punches. We saw the pressure fighter style give him issues. Tyson doesn't have that ability. He does have the ability to be a pressure fighter, but I don't think he will employ that tactic in this fight here. Even though he's coming in heavier and things like this, I don't believe that the extra weight will actually help him in the later rounds, if it gets that far. So for me, he thinks that he's going to knock him out in the first 6 rounds, which I don't think he can do. So for me, I predict Usyk to win the rematch by way of late stoppage, round 10. I'm just going to go round 10. The number popped in my head, so I'm going to use that one. So that's my prediction. Usyk to win by way of knockout in round 10. Looking forward to the fight Saturday the 21st of December in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, live on DAZN. So with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.